Sappho wasn't Eve. She wasn't even first. She was one of many, and most of them never touched a Greek olive. In the next 18 minutes, 7 named lesbian ancestors from 7 cultures your textbook skipped. Each anchored to a primary source you can pull tomorrow. Sahar Amer, 2008. Ceylon Sang, 2003. Zainab Barani, 2001. Mark Eprecht, 2004. No vibes. Receipts. Because if you only know Sappho, Empire wrote your family tree for you and edited the rest out. The Aeolic poet stays in the lineup. She's just not the founding myth, she's chapter 5. Let's redraw the map, starting where Empire taught you to skip. Let me start in Baghdad, 10th century, Abbasid Caliphate. The city is the largest in the world, bigger than anything in Christian Europe, bigger than Changchungan just before it fell. The libraries are full. The bookshops have specialty sections. One of them sells what we'd now call sex manuals, except the genre is older, weirder, and a lot more honest than that word suggests. A scholar named Ali ibn Nasr al-Khatib writes a book called Jawami al-Lajda, the Encyclopedia of Pleasure. And inside that encyclopedia, in a chapter that exists, in a manuscript you can pull, in a translation you can read, is a story about a woman named al-Zarqa. She loved women. Other women loved her back. This isn't subtext. The chapter heading says so. Here's the part your textbook skipped. Jawami al-Lajda is 10th century. Europe doesn't rediscover Sappho's full corpus until the late 17 and 1800s papyrus excavations at Oxyrhynchus, mostly. So Baghdad was reading a lesbian love story between hardcover pages about 800 years before Europe got Sappho back. 800 years. That's not a stylistic flourish. That's a publication timeline. The scholar who pulled this story out of the manuscript and into English language scholarship is Sahar Amer. Crossing Borders, Love Between Women in Medieval French and Arabic Literatures. University of Pennsylvania Press, 2008. She did the comparative work. She named al-Zarqa for an audience that had been told Arab Muslim culture was monolithically hostile to anything queer. It wasn't. It isn't. The archive was just shelved somewhere you weren't taught to look. Primary, Jawami al-Lajda, by Ali ibn Nasr al-Khatib, 10th C, Arabic manuscript. Scholar, Sahar Amer, Crossing Borders, Univ Pennsylvania Press, 2008. Hedge H3. Medieval Islamic context, not pre-Islamic Persia. Different lineage. Hedge out loud, because it matters. This is medieval Islamic, specifically Abbasid-era Arabic literary culture. It's not pre-Islamic Persia. It's not Safavid. It's not ancient Persia, the way Greek receivers of Persian culture imagined it. Sahar Amer's scope is medieval. Use her scope. Don't smuggle her evidence into centuries it can't carry. This is one ancestor. Named, dated, sourced, hedged. Move east. 2 continents over, 6 centuries later, China. 1651. The dynasty is Qing. The playwright is Li Yu, a man who wrote popular theater for paying audiences, not court literature for emperors. His play is called Lian Xiangban, Len Ben. Pitying Fragrance Companion. 2 women meet at a Buddhist temple. They fall in love. The play stages their relationship for ticket-buying crowds. This isn't a private manuscript hidden in someone's drawer. This is commercial theater, with marketing, with repeat performances, with a paying public. In 1651, a Qing dynasty audience bought tickets to watch 2 women fall in love. There was a word for what they were watching. The word is morging, mojing, literally rubbing mirrors. And this is the second insight your textbook skipped. The lexicon itself is the archive. A word existing in a culture means the thing the word names was common enough to need a name. Languages don't waste vocabulary. Rubbing mirrors wasn't invented for a play. The play used it because Qing-era Chinese already had it. The vocabulary predates the script, which means the practice predates the vocabulary. Same logic for the Greek tribade. Same logic for the Akkadian Kurguru. Different region, same rule. The word is the receipt. Heian Japan, 11th century. The women's quarters at court. Sliding paper doors. Low lacquer screens. Sei Shonagon dips a brush into damp ink and writes not about emperors, about the woman across the room and what her hair looks like when she's reading. The pillow book doesn't shout about queerness. It doesn't have to. The intimacy is the architecture. Primary. Li Yu. Lian Xiangban. 1651, plus Morgang Lexicon, plus Sei Shonagon, The Pillow Book, to 1002. Scholar, Ceylon Sang, The Emerging Lesbian, Univ Chicago Press, 2003. Hedge H2, Sang scope equals late Imperial Chinese only. For Hantang, see Brett Hinch, Passions of the Cut Sleeve, Univ California Press, 1990. 2 ancestors, named, dated, sourced, hedged again, on purpose. Older, much older, 3 millennia earlier, Mesopotamia. And this is where it gets complicated on purpose. Mesopotamia, roughly the territory of modern Iraq and parts of Syria, 3,000 years earlier than the Qing dynasty stage we just left. The goddess is Inanna in Sumerian, Ishtar in Akkadian. Same deity, two languages, one of the longest-running cults in human history. Her temple personnel include two roles I need to name carefully, Kurguru and Asinu. The primary texts describe both as male assigned at birth. The texts also describe both as ritually recoded by the cult, on purpose, as part of how worship of Inanna worked. This is not a metaphor. The gender recoding was the liturgy. The receipt is in the Epic of Era. Akkadian poem, roughly 8th century BCE, though composition tradition is older. The line reads, and this is from the translation, in the standard Akkadian literary corpus, whose maleness Ishtar turned female, for the awe of the people. 3,000 years before the word transgender existed in English. 3,000 years before the word queer existed in English. The clay tablet is older than the alphabet you're reading right now. The ritual is documented. The category is documented. The hostility we'd expect later, it isn't there in this text. The text describes the transformation matter-of-factly as cult function. Here is the hedge. It is the longest hedge in this video, and I want it on screen for as many seconds as it takes. Kurguru and Asinu were male-assigned gender-variant cult votaries. This is precedent for gender variance in a religious context. It is not evidence of female-bodied transmasc identity in ancient Mesopotamia. Different lineage, both matter. Don't conflate them. Primary, Epic of Era, to 8th C BCE Akkadian plus Enan Ishtar liturgical corpus. Scholar, Zainab Bahrani, Women of Babylon, Gender and Representation in Mesopotamia. Routledge, 2001. Hedge H6, Male-assigned cult votaries not female-bodied transmasc precedent. For my transmasc viewers, this archive is your precedent, just not in the way a Wikipedia tag would lazy pin it. Precedent is plural. Lineages don't have to flatten to count. Cross the Atlantic, the land that became called America, long before that name. This is the continent your textbook called discovered. Before that word arrived, the land had categories empire would later overwrite. Female-assigned people who lived as men, female-assigned people who married women, documented across dozens of tribal nations, Mohav, Casca, Klamath, and more, each with its own language, its own ceremony, its own word for the role. The Spanish missionaries who showed up in the 15 and 1600s had one word for all of it. The word was a slur. I'm not going to repeat it, because the slur is the receipt of the system. It is not the receipt of the people. Let me name the correction directly, because this one gets flattened constantly. The word two-spirit is from 1990. A pan-indigenous gathering in Winnipeg coined it as an umbrella, a modern English language tool to organize across nations and resist colonial vocabulary. It is not pre-contact. It is not a single identity. It is not a tribal language word. The pre-contact reality was plural by design. The Mohav word Hwame named female-assigned people who took husband's work, hunted, and married women. The Casca had their own recorded role. The Klamath had another. The categories did not translate into each other. They were never supposed to. One map, many archives, none of them imported. Primary, multi-tribal ethnographic record, 1850S-1930S. That record itself filtered through colonial observers. Read it for the categories, not for the framing. Scholar, Will Roscoe, Changing Ones, Third and Fourth Genders in Native North America, St. Martin's Press, 1998. Hedge H9, Roscoe primarily covers Native North America. Mesoamerica is a thinner archive. Pete Sigel, The Flower and the Scorpion, Duke Univ Press, 2003, is the closest entry. I am naming this coverage gap on purpose. This is the meta hedge. Saying this scholar covers this region, not that one, is not weakness. It is the receipt of the receipt. Now the continent empire told you was always homophobic. Watch this. A scholar named Mark Eprecht spent years inside archives European empire built specifically to not find this. Mission records, colonial court files, apartheid-era police reports. Each one designed to either erase same-sex desire or criminalize it on the way through. He found the receipts anyway. Pre-colonial oral history. Court testimony from cases the magistrates didn't quite know how to file. Ethnographic accounts that the observers tried to bury inside footnotes, and the footnotes survived. The archive was hostile. The archive was also self-incriminating. Eprecht read it for what it was forced to admit, not for what it wanted to say. Now, I want to name a thing carefully, because this is the political peak of the video. The phrase, homosexuality is un-African, is not African. It was manufactured. In 4 stages. Stage 1, colonial administrators wrote same-sex practices out of the official record. Stage 2 Christian missionaries renamed what survived as sin. Stage 3 Apartheid and colonial criminal codes renamed sin as crime. Stage 4 20th century politicians, trained inside those very archives, repeated un-African as if it had always been there and got applauded for it. It wasn't. It was made. In Europe. On purpose. And then it was sold back to the continent it was used against. That is not a slogan. That is a 4-step paper trail. Primary. Pre-colonial Southern African ethnographic and oral history corpus plus colonial era court and mission archives, read against the grain. Scholar. Mark Eprecht. Hungochani. The History of a Dissident Sexuality in Southern Africa. McGill Queen's Univ Press. 2004. And Heterosexual Africa? The History of an Idea from the Age of Exploration to the Age of AIDS. Ohio Univ Press. 2008. Hedge H5. Eprecht's primary scope is Southern Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Lesotho. Not pan-continental. West African Archives, Masi, Hausa, others, are a separate, thinner inquiry. Don't smuggle Southern African evidence into West African claims. One region, 2 books, named, dated, pressed, hedged. This ancestor is yours, and the receipt is sourced. Don't outsource the citation when the slogan comes back. 5 regions, 6 centuries to 3 millennia spanned. Now finally Greece, where the textbook started, where we'll spend the least time. Sappho, Lesbos, 7th to 6th century BCE. Aeolic Greek dialect. The fragments we have are fragments because they were always going to be fragments. My tongue is broken. A thin fire runs under my skin. Fragment 31. That is not metaphor for falling in love. That is somatic phenomenology. She wrote the body as a body that watches another body across a room in short circuit. The story that Pope Gregory burned her 9 books? 19th century myth. The real loss was quieter. The Aeolic dialect fell out of literary fashion. Papyrus decays in damp climates. Editors stopped copying her. That's it. Less satisfying. More true. Scholar of record. Demetrios Yatromonolakis. Sappho in the Making. Harvard University Press. 2007. She stays. She's just not Eve. Megillah. 2nd century CE. Lucian of Samosata writes a satirical dialogue. Dialogues of the Courtesans. Number 5. Megillah shaves her head, removes the wig, asks the other woman in the scene to call her Megillus. Masculine name. Masculine grammar. Inside a satire. Reading Megillah as transmasc precedent is a modern reading. It is not Lucian's claim. Lucian wrote satire. Sandra Boehringer's chapter in Ancient Sex. Edited by Blondell and Ormond. Ohio State University Press. 2015. Walks the line carefully. The possibility is named, not the verdict. This is precedent the way Section 4 hedged Mesopotamia. Different lineage. Still precedent. The text remembers. Modern readers should hedge what they ask the text to do. Bassa. 1st century CE. Rome. Martial court poet, epigrammatist, professional hater writes epigrams 1.9 specifically to attack a woman named Bassa for sleeping with women. The poem drips contempt. It is not a love poem. It is the opposite. That is exactly why it is evidence. Martial would not have wasted an epigram on a non-existent category. The hatred is the census. The slur is the receipt. The hostile witness, dragged into court 2,000 years late, testifies on the wrong side of his own intent. Scholar of record. Sandra Boehringer's broader scholarship on the tribatic tradition, see her chapter materials, and the survey in the tribatic tradition MA thesis archived at Skemen, is. Bassa was real because Martial said she wasn't supposed to be. Sparta. 7th century BCE. Alcman composes choral lyric for young women performing in public ceremony. The Parthenion Fragment 1. Louvre Papyrus 1855. 2 named performers, Agido and Hagesichora, are praised in language that runs through every register desire has. This is not a private love poem. This is institutionally sanctioned female-female erotic praise inside a civic religious choral tradition. The Plato epigram calling Sappho the 10th muse Anthologia Palatina 9.506 attribution is contested. Likely Hellenistic, not Plato. Don't cite it as Plato. Cite it as the tradition's afterthought. Scholars of record. David Campbell, editor. Greek Lyric 2. Loeb Classical Library 143. Claude Calame, Choruses of Young Women in Ancient Greece, 197, 719, 97, English edition, 5 regions. 6 centuries to 3 millennia spanned. 7 named ancestors. 2 collective contexts. 9 evidence anchors. Now let's name the method. Let me name the method we just used. Reverse cartography reading. Flip the map before you flip the story. Start where Empire told you to skip. Move inward from the margins. End at the center the textbook started with and let it arrive as one chapter among many, not the founding myth that owns the rest. Lesbos still matters. It's just not Eve. Sappho stays in the lineup. She's standing fifth. This is not anti-Greek. This is anti-monopoly. The method does not erase the canon. It reshelves it. Reshelving is not the same as burning. We of all readers should know the difference. The receipts came in 4 tiers. Use all 4. Skip any one, and the claim weakens. Tier 1, a primary text. Named. With a date, even a contested one. Tier 2, a modern scholar of record. Named. With year and press. Tier 3, a hedge said out loud. The scope, the limit, the lineage you do not conflate. Tier 4, a citation document linked. Public. Arguable. Survives the comment section. 4 tiers. Not academic vibe. Evidence in motion. This is the difference between historians say and Sahar Amer, Crossing Borders. Penn 2008. Page 73. One of those holds in a fight. The other one folds. Here is what the method buys you. When a politician says homosexuality is un-African, you now have Mark Epprecht. 2 books. 2 presses. A 4-stage paper trail. Don't argue feelings. Hand them the bibliography. When a relative says, this is a Western thing, you now have al-zarqa, 10th century Baghdad. Inside a book with a chapter heading, 800 years before Europe rediscovered Sappho. When a textbook says, lesbian history starts at Sappho, you now have 9 anchors, 6 regions, 3 millennia, and the textbook moved to chapter 5. One more thing. Then I owe a few people thank you notes. 1 aphorism, then the dedications. Empire didn't burn Sappho's books. It just made sure you only learned her name. The rest of your family tree is on your bookshelf if you build it. 3 thank you notes. Then we're done. For queer Asian readers who were told this isn't your history, al-zarqa was named in Baghdad. Li Yu's couple was named in Qing, China. Sei Shonagon kept her quiet corner in Heian, Japan. These ancestors were always yours. They were just shelved somewhere you weren't taught to look. For transmask, Vietnamese friends who don't see your face in the canon yet, Kurguru and Asinu are precedent inside Mesopotamian liturgy. Megillah is precedent inside Lucian's satire. Different precedent. Still precedent. The map is older than the language it was drawn in. For queer Africans whose ancestors Mark Epprecht heard, even when colonial archives were built specifically to not record them, your lineage was never imported, it was buried, and it has been excavated. 2 books, 2 presses, a 4-stage paper trail. Hand it to anyone who says otherwise. Last thing, all 9 receipts are pinned in the comments. The citation doc is linked underneath. Argue with the sources, not with me. And if you have an ancestor from a region this video didn't reach today, drop her name in the comments. Or his. Or their. We'll find her next time. No like and subscribe. You came this far. You already chose. The map keeps redrawing.